Night shift on Dock 9 was supposed to be easy. Scrap haulers came in, left patched, and the station went quiet again. Jace Rowan liked that. Quiet meant no surprises and no people getting hurt. The surprise hit anyway. A heavy boom rolled through the repair bay. Orange light flashed. The floor shook and dust fell from the crane rails. For one stunned second, everyone stared. Then alarms screamed and red lights spun. Fire in Bay C. The intercom barked. Evacuate. Workers ran. A supervisor yelled for head counts. Jace ran too until he heard something that did not belong in a place of steel and sirens. A small cry. He stopped at the bay doorway. Heat pushed out like an oven. Smoke hugged the ceiling. Inside, a cargo pod lay on its side, split open. Flames crawling along spilled insulation. The cry came again, thin and shaking. Jace grabbed a respirator and shoved it over his face. The emergency door started to close. He jammed his boot in the gap and slipped through alone. Basie was a storm of heat. The air shimmered. He stayed low and followed the sound toward the ruined pod. It was not standard freight. The metal was dark and strange with lines etched across it. No tags, no company code. Just a burned seal he did not recognize. The crying came from under a bent panel. "Hey, Jace," said, keeping his voice calm. "I'm here." He sprayed foam to calm the nearest flames, then shoved a pry bar under the panel's edge. It barely moved. The cry turned into a weak squeal. A small jack lay near a toppled cart. Jace dragged it over, set it under the panel, and pumped fast. Metal groaned. The panel lifted until there was space to see underneath, curled against. The deck was a creature the station did not have a name for. It was about the size of a dog. Dark scales shimmered between blue and charcoal. Two folded wings trembled. Its eyes were huge and wet with fear. A hatchling. A dragon hatchling. Jace's mind rejected it for half a heartbeat. Dragons were myths, hollow stories, old pirate flags. Not something that cried in smoke. The hatchling looked straight at him and pleaded again. Behind Jace, a fuel line popped. Fire jumped, racing toward the jack. "All right," he whispered. "We're leaving." He peeled off his jacket, wrapped the hatchling, and lifted it close to his chest. It was hot like a warm engine, but it did not burn. Small claws hooked into the fabric. Jace turned toward the door and froze. Sheet of flame rolled across the bay between him and the exit. The shortest path was gone. The hatchling trembled harder, and Jace felt it like a pulse in his own ribs. Not words, just fear. He lowered his head, took one breath, and leapt through the heat. Fire slammed into him. The world became bright and roaring. He landed hard, rolled to shield the bundle, and kept moving. His mask filter choked. His arm scraped metal, pain flashing sharp, but he refused to stop. The bay doorway was a pale rectangle in the smoke. Jace stumbled, half-blind, and fell out into cooler air. Hands grabbed him. Someone started to pull the jacket away, then stopped. "What is that?" A technician whispered. Jay coughed. He pushed the jacket open enough to see the hatchling's face. It blinked up at him, still trembling but alive. A medic knelt beside him. "You're burned. Stay still." Jace's chest pulsed, like a second heartbeat. His shirt collar had melted. As the medic lifted it, everyone nearby went quiet. A glowing mark, shaped like a curled dragon, burned across Jace's chest. Thin lines of light spread from it like cracks, warm and bright. Far down the corridor, heavy footsteps approached. A squad of tall armored strangers entered, weapons ready. Their leader's visor lifted, revealing eyes like polished stone. He looked at the hatchling. Then at the mark, "The bond has chosen him," the stranger said. Behind them, the station's security cameras all turned at once, as if some hand was watching too. And the station finally understood the fire was only the beginning. Jace woke to white lights and a dry, bitter taste in his mouth. His chest was wrapped in bandages, yet heat still pulsed under them. It's like a small engine trying to start. He sat up too fast and swayed. A medic steadied him. "Easy. You inhaled smoke. Jace grabbed the medic's sleeve. Where is the hatchling? A soft chirp answered from the corner. A thermal blanket moved, and two huge dark eyes watched him. The hatchling was curled tight, shaking, but alive. Jace's throat loosened. Hey, it's okay. The hatchling crept closer, claws clicking on the floor. When it reached his bed, it pressed its head against the metal frame, as if checking he was real. The door slid open. 3 armored strangers entered, silent as machines. Their suits were smooth and dark, marked with faint symbols that shimmered when they moved. The leader lifted his visor. His eyes were pale and cold. He looked at Jace's bandage. The bond mark remains. Who are you? Jace asked. Envoys, the leader said. Return the hatchling. The medic took a step back. This is a civilian ward. The leader turned his head. The medic stopped talking, fear taking his voice away. Jace stood, placing himself between the envoys and the hatchling. It stays here. It's hurt. It is not yours, the leader replied. It was taken from a sealed convoy. It belongs to the Dragon Empire. One envoy raised a scanner. Blue light swept across Jace, then the hatchling. The hatchling hissed and hid behind Jace's leg. Jace felt that hiss inside his own teeth. Panic that was not fully his. He swallowed. Why can I feel that? Because you are bonded, the leader said. Fire and choice began it. Under the bandage, the mark warmed. Jace pressed his palm to it. The heat was alive, but it did not burn. Heavy boots thundered in the hallway. Human security poured in, rifles up. A station commander stepped into the doorway, gray armor scarred from old fights. Identify yourselves, the commander snapped. You are not cleared. The leader did not move. Clearance is irrelevant. Return the hatchling, and we leave. And if we refuse, the commander asked, then your station burns, the leader said, flat and certain. The commander's jaw tightened. That creature is evidence now, is royalty, the leader corrected. You are holding it with dirty hands. Royalty. Jace looked down. The hatchling was small, soot-stained, shaking like a lost child. The leader's gaze cut back to Jace. Human, your name. Jace Rowan, he said. Jace Rowan. Hand it over. Then come with us. The bond must be judged. No, Jace said. The commander snapped Rohan. Stand down. Jace did not. In his mind, an image flashed: dark chains, a narrow cage, sharp pain. Not a memory, a warning that twisted his stomach. It's telling me it'll be hurt, Jace said quietly. The commander hesitated. One security officer lowered his rifle a fraction. The scanner envoy whispered, this bond is strong. The leader's calm face tightened. A bonded human is forbidden. Then maybe your law's broken, Jace said, voice shaking but steady. I saved a crying baby from fire. That is enough to change an empire, the leader replied. Jace bent, lifted the hatchling into his arms, and wrapped it close. Relief flowed through the bond like warm water. The hatchling clung to his shirt and made a small, trusting sound. The commander stepped closer to Jace. If this becomes a war issue, you will be crushed. Jace met his eyes. If we hand it to people who threaten to burn us, we're already crushed. The leader raised one hand. Every light in the room flickered. The air turned hot, like a furnace door opening somewhere deep in the station. Security shouted, but their weapons did not fire. Their arms trembled, as if something heavier than gravity pressed on them. Under Jace's bandage, the dragon mark blazed bright. The hatchling lifted its head, and a tiny spark danced between its teeth. Jace understood. It would fight for him too, tonight alone, now. And for the first time, Jace felt power answer his fear. Jace did not really sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, the hatchling's fear slid through the bond like cold water. Before sunrise, the small dragon crawled onto his blanket and curled against his ribs. Warm and shaking, at shift change, the station commander arrived with 2 security officers and 2 scientists pushing a scanner cart. Rowan, the commander said. Lab 3. Now. The hatchling comes, Jace replied. The commander glanced at the armored envoys waiting outside the ward. Fine, keep it close. Lab 3 sealed behind them with a hiss. The scientists powered the scanner and swept a thin ring of light over Jace's chest bandage. Remove it, the older scientist said. Jack pulled the bandage away. Right. The mark was brighter than before. A curled dragon shape etched into his skin with glowing lines like claws and wings. The scanner beeped, then shrieked. The screen turned to static. Again, the commander ordered. The younger scientist changed settings. The scanner started, wind, then died with a puff of smoke. The older scientist stared at the mark. This isn't ink, it's active. Touched the glow. Warmth rose into his fingers and stopped, like a door that would not open. The hatchling watched him, tense and alert. I'm a mechanic, Jace said. I saved it, that's all. Saving it made you visible, the commander replied. The doors opened. 3 tall figures entered, wearing dark cloaks and scaled masks, followed by the envoy leader. Dragon handlers, the envoy leader said. They judge bonds. One handler clicked softly toward the hatchling. The hatchling recoiled and hid. Behind Jace's leg, sharp pulse of distrust hit Jace's chest. It rejects us, the handler said. It trusts me, Jace answered, surprised by how sure he sounded. The hatchling pressed closer, and he felt a small wave of relief through the bond. The handler lifted a thin crystal rod and pointed it at the mark. Hold still, Jace stepped back. No, Rohan, the commander snapped. Cooperate. The rod pulsed. Heat shimmered in the air. Jace's vision blurred like air above a forge. Aye. A deep echo rolled inside his bones. The hatchling squealed. The mark flared bright. The crystal rod cracked down the middle. Silence filled the lab. The handler stared at the broken pieces. That should not happen. The envoy leader's eyes narrowed. What are you? A man who ran into fire, Jace said. The handlers spoke rapidly in their own language. One word repeated like a warning. Kethra, the commander leaned in. Explain.
Oh, yeah.
The envoy leader hesitated, then said, an old bond type. Rare. Forbidden. Forbidden? Why? Jace asked. Because it can't be controlled, the envoy leader answered. A bonded human becomes a door dragons cannot lock. Jace looked down at the hatchling. It was still shaking, but it refused to leave him. The fear he felt something harder. Choice. A tremor ran through the floor, like heavy engines starting far away. A security officer burst in. Commander, unregistered ships just dropped out of slipspace, 6 of them. They're scanning the station. Duh. Commander's face went pale. Can we jam them? Not with their tech, the officer said. The commander keyed his wrist, Mike. Lock down the corridor. No one leaves Lab 3. He looked at Jace, face tight. Outside the sealed doors, Boots ran, stopped, then ran again. The envoy shifted. Closer, hands near weapons. The hatchling's throat glowed faintly. A tiny ember floated from its mouth and died. Jace saw the room in heat lines, every body a bright shape. Someone was coming fast. Jace felt the bond pull, urging him to move. The hatchling lifted its head. Terror slammed through the bond so hard, Jace grabbed the table to steady himself. In his mind, a picture flashed. Gold armor, a massive shadow, a black throne, eyes like burning stars. Not Jace's memory, Anne. Alarm from the hatchling. The envoy leader spoke quietly. They are here for the hatchling. And now they know you exist. Jace stared at the sealed doors. Then tell me what to do. One handler stepped. Close, voice low. If the Emperor learns your name, it whispered, he will come himself. Lab 3 shook. A heavy thump rolled through Dock 9, and the lights dropped to a dim red glow. Commander Hale's voice snapped over the intercom. Full lockdown. Unknown borders. Jace held the dragon hatchling tight. Its fear spilled into him through the bond, sharp and cold. The envoy leader listened at the door. They are cutting in, he said. Hale glared. To a rival lord's hunters. The leader replied, if they take the hatchling, they will kill the bonded human as well. The lab door screamed as a thermal blade bit into the seal. An orange line spread. Heat poured in. Jace scanned the room like a workshop. Vents, coolant pipes, heavy table. A maintenance hatch behind the scanner cart. Commander Jace said, "Get everyone to the hatch. When the door breaks, run." Hale barked orders. Jace dropped to a knee, popped a wall panel, and yanked a coolant hose free. Cold vapor spilled. Out. He snapped a nozzle on with shaking hands. The cut line split open. 3 figures slid inside in matte black armor. One carried a glowing cutter. Another held a net launcher. The third moved empty-handed to calm. The net fired first. Jack twisted, shielding the hatchling. The net hit the wall and snapped open, sparking as it grabbed Metal Hale and the scientists. Ran for the hatch. Jace lifted the coolant hose and blasted the cutter's blade. Frost crawled over it, glow dimmed, then cracked with a pop. The attacker jerked back. The empty-handed hunter rushed Jace. The hatchling's panic spiked. Ace's mark burned, and his vision flipped into heat lines. He saw the hunter's joints glowing and a ceiling vent above them. The hunter grabbed. For the HATCHL, Ing.JACE stepped in, yanked, and dropped his weight, pulling the hunter under the vent. He slapped the vent latch. The panel popped open. Hot air slammed down, mixing with coolant mist. A white cloud burst around the hunter, freezing and blinding. The hunter stumbled. Jack drove his shoulder into the armored chest and shoved. Hunter slammed into the bolted table with a clang. The hatchling lifted its head and spat a tiny spark. It hit the visor and burned like a torch. The hunter screamed and fell back. Jace ran. He dove through the maintenance hatch into a narrow service tunnel. Pipes lined the walls. Hale was ahead, panting. Move. Footsteps hit the grating behind them, fast and close. Jace spotted a junction control box and ripped it open. When I say close your eyes, he crossed 2 wires and yanked a breaker. The tunnel lights died. In heat vision, the hatchling glowed warm in his arms. The hunters behind them glowed hotter, steady, and sure. Now, Jace shouted. He snapped the second breaker. Emergency floodlights slammed on behind the hunters, blasting their visors. A heavy bulkhead dropped with a boom, sealing the tunnel. Hale grabbed Jace's shoulder. Keep going. Can seal the next gate, too. Jace tried to stand, but his legs felt heavy, as if the mark pulled on his blood. The hatchling pressed its snout to his chest, sending a simple feeling through the bond. Hide, hide, hide. Along with it came a flash of a dark cage and a gold chain. Jace did not know if it was memory or fear, but it made his stomach twist. Behind the bulkhead, metal rang. The trapped hunters struck it with tools, not shouting, not panicking. One began cutting, slow and patient, as if time belonged to them. Hale looked back, face tight. They won't stop. No, Jace said. They won't. For one breath, it worked. Jace breathed once, tasting oil and smoke. The hatchling went. Still, ears flat, listening for footsteps in darkness. Then a side panel hissed open beside Jace. A hidden access route. The third hunter stepped out, aiming a net launcher. The net fired. It dropped over Jace and the hatchling like a cage. The mesh tightened, shocking his muscles. He collapsed onto the grating. The hatchling squealed, and the bond screamed through his chest. A voice spoke in broken common, calm and satisfied. Bonded human. We're coming to the Dragon Court. The net loosened only when the hunter wanted it to. Jace lay on the cold grating, muscles buzzing from the shock. The hatchling was trapped beside him, wings pinned, eyes wide with fear. Jace forced his hands through the mesh and touched its scales. It's okay, he whispered. Look at me. I'm here. The hunter dragged the net into a hidden bay. A ship waited with its ramp down, smooth and dark like a blade. The envoy leader stood near the ramp and watched Jace without blinking. You threatened to burn my station, Jace said, and you broke our law by bonding, the leader replied. Move. They pulled Jace on board. A collar of light formed around the net, tightening it into a hard ring. The mark under his bandage flared hot, as if it hated the collar. The hatchling pressed against his chest anyway, sending a thin thread of courage through the bond. The ship launched. Dock 9 fell away into darkness. Stars stretched into long lines as slip space grabbed the hull. The humming in the walls felt alive, like a huge beast breathing around them. When the ship dropped out again, a planet filled the window bigger than Earth, marked by a storm band like a scar. Metal rings circled it, crowded with moving lights. On the night side, cities glittered like spilled fire. The hatchling trembled, then went still. Through the bond, Jace felt recognition and a quiet warning. Home is dangerous. Jace tried to ask where they were taking him, but the envoys only watched. One tapped a panel and a map flashed. Imperial Court. The hatchling pressed its forehead to Jace's throat. Jace swallowed and promised, silently, "I won't let them break you ever." They landed inside a fortress that was also a palace. Black stone arches rose like ribs. Gold lines ran through the floors like veins. Warm air smelled of smoke and spice. Dragons were not stories here. Huge shapes rested on platforms, watching with slow eyes. Some wore armor, some wore chains. Every gaze followed the human. "He is small," one voice said. "Dirty," another hissed. Jake kept walking. He did not bow. He held the hatchling close. A handler met them at a wide door. Her scales were pale silver, her eyes sharp. "Remove." The net, she ordered. The hunter obeyed. The mesh collapsed. Jace stood, sore but free. The hatchling climbed up his shirt and sat on his shoulder like it belonged there. The silver handler's gaze snapped to the hatchling. Her face changed. "That crest." "No." She dropped to one knee. The hall went silent. Jace's stomach tightened. "What does that mean?" Her voice turned careful, almost afraid. "This hatchling is of the Imperial line." Before Jace could ask more, guards flooded in and formed a ring around him. Their weapons pulsed with heat. "Human," a guard barked. Neil Jace did not move. "I saved it. I won't hurt it." "That is not your choice," the guard said. They marched him into a chamber shaped like a bowl. Thousands of seats rose around a central floor. At the far end, a high platform waited behind a curtain of flame. A voice boomed, "Bring the bonded human forward." Jace stepped onto the central floor. The hatchling clung tighter. Mark warmed. Steady and ready. He looked up at lords, warriors, and scholars' dragons, with crowns of bone and gold. A thin old dragon in simple robes leaned over the rail and studied Jace like a puzzle. "You ran into fire for a hatchling," the old one said. "Why?" "Because it was crying," Jace answered. "Because no one else moved." Murmurs rolled through the seats. A judge dragon rose. "Bonding a royal hatchling is theft. It is contamination. It is rebellion. It chose me," Jace said. Laughter rippled, cruel and loud. The judge raised a claw. "Dragons do not choose humans." The hatchling suddenly stood on Jace's shoulder, lifted its head, and released a sharp, small roar that cut through the chamber. The laughter died. Behind the curtain of flame, a deeper presence woke, heavy as gravity. The fire parted, and a shadow moved forward. The Emperor had arrived. The Emperor did not sit. He stood at the edge of the flame curtain, tall enough that even the proud lords lowered their eyes. Scales were midnight, his horns ringed with gold. He studied Jace then, the hatchling. The hatchling trembled, but it did not leave Jace's shoulder. "Human," the Emperor said, calm and cold. "State your claim." Jace swallowed. "I saved a crying hatchling from fire. It bonded to me. I did not ask for this." A judge dragon spat. "Lies. Bonding is a crime." The Emperor raised one claw. Silence snapped into place. Bonding is not decided by mouths. It is decided by fire. A platform rose from the floor, black stone threaded with glowing heat lines. "The old law," the Emperor said, "demands a test. If the bond is false, the human burns. If the bond is true, the hatchling will answer. Jace's heart thudded. You will kill me to prove a rule? If the bond is false, you are already dead, the Emperor replied. If the bond is true, you may live. 2 guards approached with a light collar. Jace stepped back, but the hatchling pressed into his neck, sending one clear feeling: trust. Jace lifted his chin. Fine, but do not touch it. The collar clicked around his throat. It did not choke, but it felt like a hand that wanted control. They led him onto the platform. Heat rose through his boots. The hatchling stayed with him, claws tight. The Emperor lifted his claw again. Begin. Flames erupted from vents around the platform. A ring of fire rose waist-high, then higher. Heat slammed into Jace's face. Sweat formed instantly. His lungs tightened. Jace forced his mind into mechanic mode. Fire needed oxygen. Heat traveled by flow. If he could disrupt the flow, he could buy seconds. The collar's light pulsed, blocking his hands from reaching any controls. The crowd watched, waiting for screams. Under his shirt, the mark blazed. It felt like a door unlocking. Jack clenched his fists and pictured the repair bay. The jack, the coolant, hose tools, timing, and nerve. He did not pray, he calculated. The hatchling cried once and pressed its head to the glowing mark. A wave of heat rolled out of Jace's chest, not like a blast, but like a shield closing. The flames struck an invisible wall inches from his skin and bent away. The air around him shimmered, but the fire could not touch him. The chamber went silent. The Emperor's eyes narrowed. Kethra, he said, almost to himself. The collar sparked. Its control flickered, then died. Wowed! It clattered to the platform like dead metal. Jace dropped to one knee, breathing hard but alive. The hatchling stayed pressed to him, shaking, proud, and terrified all at once. A scholar dragon whispered from the seats. An ancient bond, a partner bond. Rival lord rose, scales bright with rage. This cannot be allowed. Human with a royal hatchling as a weapon. Others shouted. Kill him. Separate them. The Emperor lifted his claw. The shouting died, but fear stayed in the air. He stepped down from the flame curtain and walked toward Jace. Each step felt like thunder. Stopped close enough that Jace could feel the Emperor's heat. The Emperor's voice lowered. Human. Jace Rowan, he said, you have survived fire. Now you will survive truth. He tilted his head and guards moved, forming a tight ring. Take the hatchling. A rival lord suddenly screamed. A hidden bolt of energy flashed from the seats, aimed straight at the baby dragon. Jace threw his body over the hatchling as the shot came down. The bolt hit the shield, not his back. Platform turned white. The force slammed Jace forward and dragged him across stone. The hatchling squealed, but it was alive, pinned under his arms. Guards surged toward the stands. Lords reached for weapons. For one breath, the court looked ready to explode. The Emperor did not move. His eyes locked on Jace. That strike was treason, he said. He pointed at Jace. Bring the human to my inner chamber. Now, at once. The doors closed behind him. The inner chamber was not a throne room. It was smaller, quieter, and built like a bunker. Thick black walls held heat inside. A single pool of glowing lava flowed behind a glass barrier, lighting the space like a slow heartbeat. Jack stood in the middle of the room with the hatchling tucked against his chest. 2 Imperial guards watched from the shadows, weapons lowered but ready. The Emperor entered alone. He did not roar, did not threaten. He simply looked at Jace the way a commander looks at a map before war. You did not flinch when the bolt came, the Emperor said. It was going to hit the baby, Jace answered. The Emperor's eyes narrowed. You call it baby even? Now, it is a baby, Jace said. It cries. It's scared. It needs someone. Silence filled the room. The hatchling shifted, then rested its head against Jace's collarbone, sending a small ripple through the bond. Tired, safe. The Emperor moved closer. Heat rose off him, heavy and ancient. This hatchling is my blood, he said. My last. Jace's stomach dropped. Then why are you letting them try to kill it? The Emperor's jaw tightened. Because a court is not family. It is hunger. He turned and stared at the lava. You think my lords fear you because you are strong. That is not the reason. And tell me, Jace said. The Emperor looked back. They fear you because you are human. Jace blinked. Humans are weak compared to dragons. The Emperor's voice sharpened. Humans are unpredictable. Humans do what makes no sense. Jace held the hatchling tighter. I ran into fire. That made sense. No, the Emperor said. It made no sense. Any sane creature saves itself first. Jace wanted to argue, but the bond pushed a strange feeling into him, curiosity. Like the hatchling was listening to, the Emperor lowered his voice. Long ago, dragons bonded with another species. They were not slaves, or partners. The bond made us greater. Jace felt the room tighten around the words. What happened? The Emperor's eyes darkened. They learned our weakness. Jace's chest mark warmed, like it disliked the word weakness. The bond is not only power, the Emperor continued. It is access. When you bond, you can be reached. You can be influenced. You can be broken from the inside. Jace's hands curled. So your partner's species betrayed you. Yes, the Emperor said. They used the bond to control our heirs. Our hatchlings? Our line? His voice dropped to a near whisper, and the Empire nearly died. Jace stared. The hatchling shifted and a pulse hit Jace's chest. Fear. But not of Jace. Fear of cages. So you banned bonding. Jace said slowly. I banned bonding with any outsider, the Emperor replied. To keep dragons safe from a second betrayal. Jace looked down at the hatchling, but it chose me. The Emperor took one step closer. That is what terrifies them. He lifted a claw, and a hologram rose from the Floran image of Jace in the fire, carrying the hatchling. The scene rewound, slowed, and stopped at the moment the hatchling looked at him. The Emperor pointed. That is the moment of choice? Jace's throat went dry. You can see it? I have studied bonds for centuries, the Emperor said, and I have never seen one begin with mercy. Jace laughed once, bitter. Mercy is basic. The Emperor's gaze sharpened, not in a court built on power. He turned off the image. Now listen carefully. A rival lord. Or I tried to strike my heir in public. That was not anger. That was a signal. A signal to who? Jace asked. To those already moving, the Emperor said, as if the word summoned it. A low rumble vibrated through the chamber. Far away, metal screamed, doors sealing, alarms starting. One guard stepped from the shadows. Emperor, intruders breached the inner rings. The Emperor did not look surprised. He is early, he said. Jace's pulse jumped. Vark. The Emperor nodded once. He will try to seize my heir and blame the chaos on the human. Mark burned, hot and steady. Then let me leave. I can hide the hatchling. The Emperor's eyes locked onto Jace. No, Jace stiffened. Why not? Because the court will not believe you, the Emperor said. And because your bond is the key they want. Jace's stomach tightened. They want me to. The Emperor's voice turned hard. Yes, and now you will choose. He stepped closer, towering. Give me my heir, and I will spare your life. Refuse, and you will be hunted across worlds. Jace's mind flashed with fear. Then the hatchling pressed its head to his chest and sent one clear feeling. Leave me. Jay met the Emperor's eyes. I won't abandon it. For the first time, something like respect crossed the Emperor's face. Then the chamber lights flickered. The alarms outside became a roar. The coup had begun. The inner chamber doors slammed shut with a deep clang. The Emperor did not flinch. He stepped to a wall panel and pressed his claw to it. The black stone lit with gold lines, and the whole chamber hummed like a waking machine. Inner ring sealed, a guard reported. A second later, the air shook in impact far above. Dust drifted from the ceiling. Jace tightened his hold on the hatchling. Through the bond, he felt two emotions at once, fear, and a rising heat that felt like anger learning to breathe. They're still coming, Jace said. Yes, the Emperor replied, because Vark is not here for my throne. 8. is here for my heir. And for you. Jace's mark burned under his shirt, steady like a lit brand. Then tell me what to do. The Emperor's eyes narrowed, measuring. You are a mechanic. I fix ships, Jace said. I'm not a soldier. The Emperor's voice cut hard. You jumped into fire. Stop pretending you were small. Another impact hit. This time the chamber wall flashed, and a low metallic groan ran through the floor. A guards come unit crackled. Emperor breach at Corridor 7. They are using void cutters. The Emperor finally moved, crossed the chamber to a hidden door, and pressed a sequence. Stone slid aside, revealing a narrow service route lined with pipes and heat vents. This palace was built for war, the Emperor said. Follow me, Ace. Ran behind him, Hatchling clinging to his chest. The service route opened into a wide underhall. Above them, distant shouting echoed through the vents. The smell of smoke was already creeping in. They reached a control junction, thick valves, pressure gauges, and emergency locks. Jace's eyes snapped to the layout like it was a familiar engine room. Those hunters, Jace said, pointing, they'll follow the fastest path. Corridor 7 connects to the air chambers. The Emperor looked at him. Can you stop them? Jace swallowed. I can slow them. I can trap them. Do it, the Emperor said. Jace ripped open a panel. His fingers shook, but his mind was clear. He rerouted vent pressure to Corridor 7, then opened the coolant emergency line. A deep hiss rolled through the underhall. Frost began to crawl across the nearest pipes. If they cut through, Jace said, they'll hit a sudden freeze. In zero visibility. The Emperor's eyes flicked to the hatchling, and if they push through anyway... Jace looked down. The hatchling's throat glowed faintly. It was scared, but not helpless anymore. Then we fight, Jace said. They moved fast through the underroots, emerging near the air chamber doors. Imperial guards were already down armor, cracked, weapons dropped. Ash. The floor was smeared with ash and gold. Dust. Jace's stomach turned. The Emperor's voice dropped to a rumble that shook the air. Vark. Act! From the shadowed corridor ahead. A tall lord stepped out. His scales were iron gray, his armor sharp. Around him, hunters formed a half-circle, weapons raised. Vark smiled. Emperor, you look tired. Emperor took one step forward. You struck my heir. I struck your weakness, Vark replied, eyes sliding to Jace. A human holding your blood. An embarrassment. And an opportunity. Jace felt the hatchling's fear spike, then harden into something new. A tiny roar built in its chest. Vark lifted a net launcher, hand over the hatchling. And the human comes too. Jace's grip tightened. No. Vark laughed once. Then watch your baby die. He fired. The net flew like a dark wave. Jace reacted on instinct. He shoved the hatchling behind his shoulder and slammed his palm to the floor control near the doorframe. The corridor gates, dropped steel shutters slammed down between hunters, slicing their formation in half. 3. Hunters were trapped on Jace's side too close. Now. Jace shouted. He hit the second switch. The coolant vent he rerouted earlier detonated into the corridor in a white blast. Fog and frost swallowed the hunters. Their visors iced over, they staggered blind. Jace moved like a man in his own workshop, grabbed a fallen spear, hooked one hunter's ankle, and yanked. The hunter crashed. Jace kicked the net launcher away and pinned it under a shutter edge. A hunter lunged. Jace ducked, slammed the spear shaft into the attacker's knee joint, and sent them down hard. Then Vark roared, and the shutters behind him buckled from sheer force. His heat poured into the corridor, melting frost in seconds. Clever human, Vark snarled, but you forget what we are. He raised his claw, gathering a blast of fire bright and lethal. Jace felt it before he saw it. The hatchling screamed. Through the bond danger, climbed up Jace's chest, standing between him and the flame like a tiny shield. No, Jace hissed. The hatchling opened its mouth, for a heartbeat. Nothing happened. Then a stream of fire burst out, small, but pure, bright as a cutting torch. It struck Vark's forming blast and shattered it mid-air. The backlash slammed. Vark backward into his hunters. Silence hit the corridor like a punch. The hatchling trembled, exhausted, and collapsed into Jace's arms. The Emperor stepped forward, his eyes burning. You attacked my heir in my own halls. Vark tried to rise, but Imperial guards surged in from side routes. Routes Jace had just opened with his traps. They locked weapons to Vark's throat. Vark spat. The court will never accept a human partner. The Emperor looked at Jace, then at the hatchling asleep against his chest. His voice filled the corridor, carrying like law. Then the court will learn, he said. He turned to his guards. Mark this moment, my heir chose. The bond is real. Jace's throat tightened. What happens to me? The Emperor stepped close, towering. Then did something no one expected. He bowed his head slightly. Human Jace Rowan. He said, you protected my blood with your body and your mind. You did not seek power, yet you carried it with honor. Lifted his claw and touched Jace's glowing mark. The heat did not hurt. It felt like a seal closing, strong, steady, complete. From this day, the Emperor declared, humans are not tools in my empire. They are not dirt under claw. The guards around them froze. Even the air seemed to pause. Humans, the Emperor said, louder, will have a place. He looked at Jace like a commander giving a final order. You will be the first. Later, when the coup fires were put out and the palace stopped shaking, the Emperor led Jace to a balcony overlooking the city-ringed planet. Thousands of dragons gathered below, watching. Jace stood with the hatchling on his shoulder, his eyes wide. The Emperor's voice rolled across the crowd. This human saved my heir. This human survived the test of fire. This human refused. Gold refused. Fear and chose loyalty. He pointed to the hatchling. And my heir chose him back. The hatchling lifted its head and released a proud little roar. The crowd went silent then. Slowly a deep rumble of acceptance began. Not cheers, not love. But something stronger than noise changed. Jace looked out over the empire and finally understood the real ending. He did not just rescue a crying hatchling. He accidentally rewrote the future of two species.